Hey guys, this is my second video on lead enrichment. And this time we're going to do it on inbound leads that are coming onto the website. So what we're going to do is, let's say there's a scenario where a customer fills up a Typeform form on your website, right? And you're sending that lead into your CRM, which is Attio, but there's not enough information for the sales development representative to reach out and understand about the prospect, right? And hence, we are going to send that data from Attio to Clay, find the LinkedIn profile of that potential prospect, and get it back to Attio again, right? So let's get down to the workflow. So talking about the first step, which is getting Typeform to integrate with your CRM system, right? So this is my CRM system. This is Attio's settings. If you see, there's an app section. Let me just take you back. Yeah, this is the app section, and you can basically see there are a bunch of integrations possible with Attio on Typeform, and then you'll have to install this. This will take a couple of seconds, and connect your Typeform account with this Attio CRM. So you'll basically have to be logged into the Typeform account as well, right? The second step is right. Once this done, moving on to the second step. Basically, what we're going to do over here is that we're going to set up a workflow over here, and the workflow is similar to what we had done with the company's workflow. In here, what you do is we submitted first step trigger, as in when a person basically fills up the form with first name, last name, phone number, and company name. This workflow is going to help us get the data from Typeform, which is your form embedded on the website, into Attio, right? You select a couple of things like the connection, and then you select the form responses sheet, or rather the form which you had created inside Typeform. And the second step basically is trying to map all the information uh, coming from the Typeform responses into your Attio CRM, right? So in this case, in the form, the prospect is filling up the first name, the last name, the phone number, and the company, and email address as well. So there are a bunch of fields that you're supposed to map. You're supposed to map the email addresses field against the email addresses from the Typeform. These fields are basically inbuilt fields within your Attio database, right? So once that's done and then you publish it and you run it, you will get, say, all of your data flowing in. So basically, once the Typeform Attio integration and the workflow setup is done, as soon as the prospects start filling up your Typeform web forms, uh, the data is going to land up in the people object or records. This is how the table is going to look like. This is basically all the records that I have. And if you see, a bunch of people have the LinkedIn profile, a few people don't have the LinkedIn profile. So we are going to send the data of these specific people without a LinkedIn profile to Clay, get it enriched, and then get it back to RTO. So let's dive into the workflow where I'm going to show you how to send the data to Clay for enrichment. I've set up a manual trigger. This can be automated as well. As soon as a prospect comes from your website, you can, and if the LinkedIn profile is not available, you can send it to Clay automatically, right? And then you find the records of the people with the condition that their LinkedIn profile is empty. I've put in a limit of 100 over here. And then you'll have to add a loop function for this task, right? In order to search all the records without the LinkedIn, without the LinkedIn. You have to send this data over to Clay. For that, we're going to use the send HTTP request. The method is post. You basically you enter the the Clay webhook into this, which means that through this the data is going to be sent to Clay, and you send in all the data that you're gonna you'll be requiring on Clay to help you enrich this specific lead better, right? For that, you'll have to, so there's this important point over here. You'll have to send a unique identifier. In this case, the unique identifier for sending the data over here is the Attio record ID, which is a unique record ID, which I'm going to show it to you over here, which gets created for every single, prospect in your database on Attio, right? So I'm sending this data in the JSON, in this format, and basically I'm sending the Attio record, the full name, the email, the domain, and the company name, right? Hey, so this is how the data is going to look like in your Clay table. We've received all the data from Attio through the webhooks, right? Now, there are different ways in which you can find the LinkedIn profile, but this is one of the ways in which I did it. There are different ways on YouTube, on LinkedIn to find the LinkedIn profile. I've basically used a waterfall approach using the full name, the last name, the company name, and the email ID to find the LinkedIn profile of this person, right? Now, there's an additional check that I've put in place. Uh, and the check is that sometimes there's a possibility the LinkedIn profile being returned is not correct, right? And in order to solve for that problem, what I'm doing is the LinkedIn profile that we got in the first step, I am enriching, or rather, I'm trying to figure out the companies the person has worked with, and then there are a few checkboxes to see whether the person is really working in that specific company and matching it with the company that I got from Attio. And I've also tried to figure out the email ID of the person. And what I'm trying to see is whether this email ID is matching with the email ID that I had fed in the beginning. If it does, then I'm saying that this is the right LinkedIn profile. In certain cases, it may not be right. Hence, I'm not sending the data back to Attio because I don't want wrong data in my CRM, right? Now, this is how the Clay table looks like. Now, we'll have to send this data back to Attio, right? And for that, we'll have to create another workflow. Once the data from Clay has been enriched, the next workflow of this this entire lead enrichment process is basically you try to get the data from Clay to Attio. For that, you set up one more workflow. You are creating a webhook and for receiving the data, right? And then you set up a parse JSON step, which basically means you're trying to understand the data that's coming from Clay over to Attio. Uh, I'd mentioned this in my another video. Basically, I had difficulty figuring out this step. Thanks to Joe Rue for his video on another lead enrichment process. I was able to figure this out, right? In this, you will be basically mapping the Attio record ID, the LinkedIn profile that's going to move from Clay to Attio, and then you basically find the record in your people data, and this record is the record that has come from the Typeform web form from the website. The condition is the record ID is matching the Attio record ID that we are using to move data from, Attio to Clay. And then the fourth step is basically we are updating that record, right? So yeah, just giving a brief overview on how the workflows are basically working. What we're trying to do is there's a type form submission that's happening and data is getting sent to Attio. Then we are sending the data over to Clay for the enrichment. And then there's a third workflow where we're receiving the data of the LinkedIn profiles enriched from Clay back to Attio, right? So this is about it. If you like this video, please drop me a comment or DM me if you have any doubts or queries. Thanks.